Welcome along, Bits and Bobs is here. Will in studio. Will, hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Conor McKeown, hello to you.
Hi, Joe.
As ever, Indosport Podcast at independent.ie is where you can send your emails. A few things to get through. We had Keith in Texas via Patrick's Well. On to us, he said, your pod not only graces the Strip in Vegas, been a lot of Vegas talk lately, it also is a mainstay on Route I-10 most mornings, driving to San Antonio for work. I is for interstate, if you were wondering. And the I-10 is the fourth longest interstate in the US, 2,500 miles of road, built in 1957. Is anyone still listening?
It's all off the top of your head as well. You didn't even need to look that up.
Lovely connection to home that AI can't replicate. As a lad in my early 40s, I understand your big year is a milestone, Joe. As a new dad, best advice I got was to imagine in 20 years' time, looking back on these moments you have with your kid now, you'd give everything you have to relive those moments. Keep it country, as they say here, and in parts of Monaghan. Keith in Texas.
That's lovely, isn't it?
It's a nice one, isn't it? Yeah, beautiful.
I always like when someone emails in, it's like, I'm currently driving in my pickup truck. You know, it's something that I find very funny about it.
The world's amazing that Keith via Patrick's Well listens to us on the I-10.
Yeah, well, have you driven in America?
I have in Texas.
Yeah, it's quite sort of boring. Like the roads are so good and so straight that it's very, like, it's easy enough to your mind wander. The last time I was in the States driving, I kind of thought it was like a cliche from The Simpsons, but like literally all the billboards that you drive past is like 1-800 Lionel Hutz. You know, if you crash your car, you
Lionel Hutz. I replied to this email from Owen from Offaly to say, Owen, that is nothing short of sensational. Hi lads. Love the recent chat about 40th birthday celebrations and Joe's mates considering Las Vegas. Let me tell you about what we and my three mates from Offaly did for ours. 4 years ago, we sat down and started throwing around ideas for how we'd mark the big 4-0 in 2025. 4 years planning!
Oh, God.
We'd all the usual suggestions, a weekend in Vegas, big party at home. But then one of the lads who had a long-standing bucket list dream said it. The Super Bowl. Now, we all knew this wasn't going to be cheap. Super Bowl tickets aren't exactly the price of a weekend in Bundoran. So we came up with a plan. Each of us would put aside €100 every month for 4 years into a Revolut vault. Simple, right, he says? But then, one of the lads pointed out that at the time, Bitcoin had just taken a nosedive.
This is the send up for a Brad Pitt movie.
After hitting a new high, the thinking was, what if we didn't just save the money, but invested it? It felt like a bit of a gamble, but wasn't that the spirit of the Super Bowl after all? For over 3 years, we were deep in the red. There were months when it looked like we'd be lucky to afford tickets to an Offaly hurling match. But about 12 months ago, Bitcoin rebounded, and then some. Our investment doubled, and suddenly our Super Bowl dream wasn't just alive, it was happening. Fast forward to February 2025. That's good. And there we were, standing in the middle of Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. We were decked out in our Offaly jerseys, soaking in the atmosphere of the biggest game on earth. The jerseys turned out to be a great conversation starter. We met Irish and Irish Americans everywhere we went, all buzzing to see a bunch of lads from the faithful county living it up. Although the game itself was disappointing, the spectacle was up there with anything we'd ever seen. The sheer scale of the event, the halftime show, the noise in the stadium was something else. The tickets set us back €6,500 each. But it was worth every cent and the gamble. New Orleans is a city built for a party, and we made sure to do it justice. From Bourbon Street to the best jazz bars in the city, we soaked it all in. As the final whistle blew and the green confetti of the Eagles rained down, we looked around at each other and we knew we'd pulled off something special.
Unbelievable. That's one of the great emails of all time ever written.
That's like an essay that you wrote in school, but you finished it with, and then we woke up and it was all a dream.
It's good stuff. I'm nearly finished. What had started as a wild idea 4 years ago, it turned into the trip of a lifetime. For Joe's mates debating whether to head over to Ireland, New Zealand and Chicago or to Vegas, just go for it. There's nothing quite like seeing a big game live, and a weekend in Chicago with the sea of Irish fans taking over is guaranteed to be class. Might not be the Super Bowl, but it will be a trip you won't forget. And just in case we need another big trip, the savings have already started for the 50th, whatever that may be. All the best. Owen from Offaly.
They're going to invest in NFTs or something like that.
How good is that?
That's incredible. That's amazing. I mean, there's a Netflix documentary in that, I'd say.
3 years of watching Bitcoin tank.
Yeah. Wearing your Offaly jersey to the Super Bowl.
So good.
So good. Owen, amazing.
Does it make you more likely to go on your own adventure?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to go.
I just think that, and I'm sure you've had this conversation, but I think Vegas for a 40th is just too much of a cliche.
Chicago won out. Ireland, New Zealand.
That's rugby. That's worse.
Speaking of, hi team. Your paper gave Sam Prendergast a 7 out of 10 rating. I'm neutral in the Prendergast-Crowley culture war, but how the Christ could anyone think he was a 7 out of 10? He was really bad. Surely Irish rugby pundits can call this out. We'll lose heavily to France if he plays like that against them. Thanks, Killian. The Prendergast-Crowley culture war continues. Robust debate on the left wing this week.
Very much so. And it has been a very polarising performance. Like, to be fair, I think 7 is pretty standard. Like, it's not as if he got an 8 or a 9. I don't like. Was he that bad? That
7 is mixed.
Yeah, a 7 would indicate a mixed enough out.
7 is like your starting position generally when it comes to player ratings. You work your way up or down from that.
He was hovering at a 6, and then he had the 50-22, and that gets you up to a 7.
I think you could stand over a 7. I actually don't recall who did the ratings for the Indo, so I don't want to point fingers. But no, I think you could stand that over that.
I think so. What do you make though of the nature of the culture war?
It's very tiring. At least when Ronan O'Gara and Johnny Sexton were kind of in similar parts, they were like at the very height of the sport. So it meant I felt like less grading. Whereas two guys who were like finding their way in the sport and were having this very noxious debate, or just noxious debate is playing out. It's pretty tiring. I don't know how you find having to talk about it.
What's so interesting about the debate is the management couldn't be clearer. There is no debate.
Yeah,
you're all wasting your time talking about this. We've decided Sam Prendergast, if he's not quite better now, he's close enough to better for us to be happy with him, and we definitely think he's the higher ceiling. We've seen things in Jack Crowley we don't like. We've taken him off routinely in big games. First chance we got in November, we swapped him out for Prendergast. We've stuck with Prendergast ever since. It's Prendergast.
Yeah.
What are you debating this for?
That's why it's funny, because like Rudd gets a lot of criticism for like, you know, writing about Sam Prendergast, but what you just said holds true. Like Andy Farrell made it very clear in November with some pointed criticism, Jack Crowley, what he thought, and while he's not there at the moment, there's definitely an input on his part, I would say, into how the team is being selected. And like the fact that Sam Prendergast played all 80 minutes the last 2 weeks at number 10, despite the fact that the week before that, Jack Crowley actually had played very well in relief, shows that they are wedded to giving him this window, and that's what they want to do.
And like, sorry if this is the most sort of cliche debate of all time, but is your 10 not the one position where stability is like almost the main thing that you're after? You know, like, I mean, I even remember going back to when it was Ron O'Gara and David Humphreys, and they were both very different players, and it kind of changed how Ireland played at that time. Like, it really did in terms of the speed of the ball and how much of it was passed and kicked.
I think so. I personally, I don't care who they pick, and I don't know enough about rugby to know what Jack Crowley's done wrong. I can see why they like Prendergast. It's not jumping out to me what they're not having with Crowley, but they're definite about it. But once they've made up their mind, and in Andy Farrell we sort of trust at the moment because that management ticket have proven they know a lot about rugby. Once they've made up their mind, I think they have to stick with go for as much stability as possible. Don't be messing these guys around. You're in, you're out, you're back in, you're in for 2 games, then you're out. It drive you to neuroticism.
But I'm open to the possibility that we're just so used to that 10 drama that we almost want it and expect it. Like in other countries do look at us, because got a few comments on the YouTube videos about like, why are you guys so obsessed with out half, like from other countries? And maybe it is just an Irish thing that we're so used to, like throughout the years. My entire time watching rugby, basically, there's been a massive out half debate the entire time. Under Johnny Sexton, towards the end, it was more about the gap and the lack of alternatives. But there's always been this existential crisis at the position that I don't think other countries, even when there are a lot of options, have. Like England have 2 out halves at the moment, like 2 Smiths, but people aren't going ballistic about it the way people in Ireland seem to be.
No, not as much. I suppose it's only a debate till it's not. Like once Humphreys cleared off, then it was. And sorry, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. Age. Once Rog won that mini war, it wasn't talked about really, Rog, until 2009. And then it was 3-4 years of really, actually, that's exactly what you want to avoid is Rog and Sexton. It really wasn't good for Sexton. You read his book, it was terrible for him. He couldn't play as well for Ireland as he could for Leinster because he didn't know if he was in the team or not. And it was just a disaster. And then obviously you've Rod's face on the big scoreboard at a World Cup game when he's trying to kick, all that kind of stuff. But then once that settled down, I'd say from 12, 13, we never debated the out half position really again until it's flared up now. It's just such a pivotal position that when it's in flux, you can't not talk about it.
I don't agree with the notion that like the team should definitely stick with one guy if that individual is not nailing down the jersey by performing consistently well all the time, just for the notion of stability. That's not what I think anyway, but I could be wrong on that. Like, I feel like there should be room to change your out half if the other out half isn't performing like really, really well. Ireland are one of the best teams in the world, so they should demand a level of performance of that position commensurate with that status. Yeah. Not just saying, oh, let's just simply pick a guy. Albeit I take, actually Connor's right, it is the most important position, but I'm a little uneasy of just like saying, oh, we're picking him come what may. Because that's what the future dictates we should do. I just think I don't like sport being decided like that.
But is he not at and again I don't know, but is he not at a delicate age, time in his, you know, you do have to at some stage take risks with a fella, and sometimes that risk is actually just to leave them at it.
Look, this is the boys and Bitcoin's up and down at the moment.
Yeah.
But like it's the signs are Bitcoin's on the way back.
Okay.
That's where they are with this. And they're holding their nerve with Prendergast.
Yeah.
So the World Cup 2027 is Andy Farrell in his Offaly jersey at the Super Bowl moment. Essentially,
with Prendergast.
He can say, look, the gamble...
What was the line again? As the final whistle blew and the green confetti rained down, we looked at each other and knew we'd pulled off something special.
That's Andy Farrell and Simon Easterby in Australia in 2027.
I'm going to have to get you to send me a copy of that email just to cheer me up in the mornings.
That's just to show you that there's a possibility to do great things in life. You know?
That could be a mini-series. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So let's start casting that now.
Yeah. So I've a long email. God, it is long. It's got several topics in it. Will I just do that and then we get into stuff we wanted to chat about?
Well, your only error here is that you started with the Offaly lads going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. A long email that's going to be hard to top to the top.
I know. I started with Prendergast and moving to Crowley. That's a joke, everyone. Jesus, it's a joke.
We looked at each other and we said, we've done it.
It is all very nasty, though. I do find... generally the YouTube comments are kind of nice, but like that's the one thing where it's kind of it gets a little bit vicious. If you say one thing about the other, it's all very.
And is it a Munster Leinster thing? Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
I presume
almost completely.
That's what it is. Sure, like what else? Yeah,
I presume it is. Yeah. So hi Joe and Co, long time, first time. Well done on the podcast. Some great listens, including sports I wouldn't usually follow. I'm currently writing this in between sets at the gym.
Yeah, I actually read that earlier on and was like, it's going to take me a lot for me to keep reading after.
Anyway, a few points below. Eddie O'Sullivan's phrases need to be clipped and released in one separate podcast. He referred to the recent media commentary, for instance, around Wales-Ireland as a bucket of steam. We'll look into that for Christmas. Eddie O'Sullivan's a joy. I love having him on. Recent comments. Oh, yes, sorry, this was the thing that I thought was interesting. This man seems to be an expert in pitches and stuff. Recent comment on strong winds, always seeming to like go one direction of play in the GAA chat, because the league, it's just been a bit dominated by the wind. So he says, that's why I knew he was involved. I work in the maintenance of sports pitches, rugby, football, mainly cricket. The majority of sports pitches face north to south due to sun setting in the west. They want to maintain visibility during evening games as a result.
Right.
Makes sense.
First time I've heard that.
Yeah, you can check this out easily on Google Maps. Some GA stadiums obviously don't follow this, probably due to the ground being squeezed into towns and cities. However, most venues created in the mid-1800s were set up north to south. And with our prevailing winds coming from the southwest, if the winds are strong, it's usually going to be down the pitch. You learn something new.
Yeah, I sort of just assumed that because generally speaking, the two ends of the ground, the kind of... the two ends would be more exposed than the stand sides, that the wind just naturally kind of, but there you go.
No, it's a north-south pitch and we've got southwesterlies.
That's the end of that debate.
Yeah, on he goes. On the left wing, I hope this podcast keeps going.
Oh.
Bloody right it will.
God. Jesus, is there a thought that it mightn't?
There was no thought it wouldn't. He says,
People just assumed it was going to...
Despite the new Ian Madigan slot. Then he says, he's shooting everyone here. I think Ian will be a great pundit in a few years.
If he keeps practicing.
He's a great pundit now.
Years as well.
Yeah, years.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant. Around the time he's like 50, he's just coming into his prime.
He's bloody good now. It would be interesting to hear both Ian and Luke together ahead of the French match. Not sure who'd better control them, Joe or Will, or both. Why don't we go for a whole? We should do some kind of a
two-hander on both.
Just a thing. I don't know what we should do, but there should be like
some sort of crossover,
an alliance crossover. Stuart McCluskey calling out Luke on X was interesting over the weekend too. See this?
No.
Stuart McCluskey, a left-wing listener, clearly. He says, Put this down in things I thought I'd never hear. Luke Fitzgerald giving tackling advice. And then a laughing face. It's just a hell of a drive-by.
Yeah, well, Luke was known as a good defender when he played.
Yeah.
So it's not as if he was like a turnstile wing who was trying to like say, "Oh, let's do this and let's do that." So
Strange, anyway. Our emailer goes on to touch on League of Ireland pitches. He reckons only Tala is spending the requisite 300 to 500 grand a year to really have them in good shape. Did not like what he saw at Talk Park. You were there. He talks about Virgin's rugby coverage. He talks about Croke Park in the NFL. And then he says, this took longer to write than I had expected. I wish I would have just commented on the YouTube page, but I can't find the account. Just some dodgy Korean account. Back to the weights. Keep up the good work, Anonymous.
Just on the pitches, and it is a thing. I like it was that weekend that I went to Talca Park for the first round of the new season for the Shelbourne Derry game. I think it was the Sunday I read in the Observer a piece by Jonathan Wilson, and he was talking about how in one of his rare weekends off he went to see a non-league game, like a really well-down non-league game in England, and it struck him that every team, even at that level, was playing the same way. Like the Guardiolification of football has gone all the way down, and everybody's trying to play out from the back. And you have the same thing in the League of Ireland now as well. That is considered the main way of playing. And as good as the players are or aren't, when the pitch is cut up, it's just impossible to do. And you could see that is, like your touch, your really good pass that's supposed to skate along the top of the turf, it starts bobbling all over the place. And it's a serious issue because particularly in the second half of that game, and I'm not just having to go at Talca here, it's just that's the only one I saw in the flesh. But it is a problem, and it is a problem with trying to play the game that basically every team in every kind of top league, well, in the top league of every league in Europe are trying to play at the same time.
Massive ramifications, because there was the goal Bowes scored against Rovers where it was ball and defeated the striker, and it was a quick 1-2 with the winger. Couldn't have been done on a bobbly pitch, really. Couldn't. So it's it's the next frontier really to improve the football. I think there's no doubt that the and I think Jonathan Wilson has even made this point, there's no doubt that Guardiola's football, his style, like it has occurred to managers in the past to play out from the back. I'm sure it occurred to Cruyff. Why do we just give the ball away? I think football minds in the past would have obviously considered that. The pitches just didn't allow for it. It's no coincidence that the kind of massive jump in quality of pitches and like across the board coincided with the Guardiola style of football kind of birthing,
Yeah, but I think it's gotten to the stage now where it's like there is no other way of playing. It's almost seen as being archaic to go back to, even if it was more practical to actually move the ball a little bit further with that first pass, just because the pitch is not giving you the sort of speed and accuracy in your first pass.
Yeah. No, it's true. So, a couple of things we wanted to touch on. We have a GA podcast also today. Colin Keys took us through some interesting things out of Congress. He was saying generally the talk there is people pretty much happy with the rules. Is the vibe of the GA fraternity as they came together. David Clifford scoring a hat-trick against Tyrone. That led people to really think these are the rules. This is what we want. Clifford to be reborn.
Well, it's amazing. I remember 5 years ago in a league game in 2020 when they moved. Actually, that game was moved to Pomeroy at the weekend because of the pitch in Omagh not being playable. And 5 years ago, they actually moved it to Eden Dork. And Clifford was sent off that day on a second yellow. He was on a yellow, and then he was kind of goaded into two fellas rolling around on the ground, and he got the second one. But they enjoyed that one up in Eden Dork that day because I think there was a bit of scepticism. Not that there was scepticism, but it was kind of like, oh yeah, well, this is what we do to good Kerry forwards, like we have our way with them. But at the weekend, Clifford scored a hat-trick, and like the children of Tyrone were all queuing up afterwards to get a feel of his jersey. So he's actually transcended all of that now at this stage. But Clifford, it's as much about the feels, I think, as anything else. Because you look at his goals, like like even where he gets the ball, if you freeze frame it, there's nothing on. Like it's not on. And then you just run the clip forward 3 seconds. And like he closes the gap so quickly with that big stride. And he has such control over the ball with the way he hops it. Like it's almost like a basketball
That
player.
was the one I thought, it's just a joy. And he's doing this on a heavy pitch where, if you haven't seen it, I mean, I'd say most people have, but he's kind of slightly to the left of the goal, men coming across slightly, and he's in motion. He's taking a step to his right. He's coming in field, and he's taking a step with his right foot, and now with his left hand, he's about to bounce the ball in that direction to continue his momentum to the right. And last second, he realises, oh, there's actually a little gap on the left. And so mid kind of bouncing the ball, he twists his hand and basketball style, bounces it the opposite way. And then boom, it all speeds up again and he scores.
Yeah.
And you just think,
And he has this
really amazing.
He has this amazing strike of a ball with very little backlift. He can hit it off the meaty part of the foot and generate a lot of power.
Yeah.
And you see with Clifford a lot, if you look before he scores a lot of his goals, he actually has, and like nobody has space or time in Gaelic football anymore, certainly not in front of the goal. But because of doing those things that you outlined there, he almost religiously bounces the ball to settle himself. If you watch all the goals he's ever scored, he will nearly always have a bounce in front of the goal, sort of uncontested, which is kind of phenomenal. And his finishing is incredible. But like, he really is a wonder. And it's like, I was watching the game that he came back against Dublin the previous week, and Theo Clancy did a great job on him. And he was playing it very close to goal, and Kerry were against the wind. And I was kind of thinking, like, trying to get these new rules, like, what does this mean? And maybe like Clifford is your player outside the arc. Like, he's your biggest kicker. Surely he's the 2-point merchant. But then you see when he plays close to goal at the weekend against Tyrone, he grabs 3 goals. So they're going to have to think long and hard about that one, because the old theory of the more times this guy touches the ball, the better. It just depends on what zone and the pitch he's at.
Yeah, I won't kind of dip too much into the Keys chat, but one thing he did say off the back of that hat-trick, I was asking the general chat about the rules, was so Clifford scores a hat-trick. Amazing. Only second time in his career he's managed to do it. Meanwhile, Tyrone, with a very strong wind, popped over 4 2-pointers. And his 3 goals should not be worth just a point more than the 2 4-pointers in the wind. So he was saying the 4-point goal back on the agenda in a big way.
Well, I get rid of the 2-pointers. Like, I mean, I'm kind of at that stage now where I think it's, I know it's different. It'll be different during the summer. But I think if we just stop giving the ball back to the keeper, if we just take the keeper out of play altogether, leave him in goals and take away 2-pointers, I think we're going to get very, very close to the game that a lot of people had envisaged. Because what we're seeing now is very formulaic in terms of, like, I was at Derry in Dublin on Saturday night, and it was interesting to see Derry get a good press on Dublin when they were in their own half, which you can do because you can't go back to the keeper. So Dublin have a lot of very good ball carriers at the back. So they they had to work very hard to get the ball out. But then it's kind of like, once they get over the halfway line, it's like the pressure is off, because Derry have retreated at the arc, and then you're waiting for your goalkeeper to come up and have your 12v11. Yeah. So it's almost a little bit too prescribed. And it goes back, and I'll make this piece and a point I'm doing this week about somebody like David Clifford and Con O'Callaghan, who made his comeback last week, Shane Walsh. So much of Gaelic football now, so many of the actions in the course of a match are very, very similar. Players are coached in a lot of way, in the same way, but the likes of Clifford in particular does stuff that no other player does, and that's why it's such a good thing to watch, because you really don't know what he's going to do.
Where are you on 2-pointers?
Well, just in the 4-point goal, like, I don't see how they would bring it back in for the championship, having not trialled it at all. It's such a missed opportunity that they took it out off the foot of those 2 trial games and they said, oh, it was bad in the trial game, ergo we should dump 7 weeks to trial it.
I feel like even after the first night they were sort of saying, we're going to get rid of this 4 goal.
So, but now we have a situation where, like, you know, people are talking about, oh, it needs to be brought back in to balance out the 2-pointers, but I just don't see that them taking that risk ahead of a championship where it has barely been trialled, and then having something go wrong on that end of it. Like, the 2-pointer staying in as is and the 3-point goal staying in as is, it could turn it a bit into what happened in basketball when, like, 3-point shooting became so prevalent, because it's a lot easier to kick a 2-pointer than it is to score a goal. So, like you saw, I think Galway have over 50% of their scores in Division 1 have been 2-pointers. I think they've scored 42 points through 2-pointers and 79 points overall. So is that what, you know, the best teams are going to do potentially? Because it's the most advantageous thing to do if you have, you know, good kickers.
The only thing is, I'd agree with that as well, and I also think that whatever about the FRC taking things out for the championship, I can't see them putting something new in. I don't think that's a runner at all, because they just don't have, like, they're evidence based, and they've kind of not given themselves the opportunity to have evidence for the 4-point goal.
Yeah.
But somebody made this point to me last week, because if you looked at Dublin's second half against Kerry last week when they had the wind, Owen O'Donnell was 1-on-1 inside with Jason Foley. Because Kerry were defending that arc, the 2-point arc. But it's just the way the weather is at the moment, that ball inside, like there's loads of space inside now.
Mm.
But that ball inside isn't really on. It just has to be a bit too precise, and the weather just won't allow it. So I think that we will see more goals as we go along. And the reason for that is that, as you said, the 2-pointer is it's such a big boost to your score for such a relatively easy thing to do, that teams will be very preoccupied with defending it to the point where they'll actually leave space inside.
Well, that's the plan. That's the hope.
Yeah, that is the theory behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, just one thing on it, like it's like changing the football championship structures ad nauseum without tackling the provincials, changing the rules but not tackling hand passing. I just think undercuts a lot of what they're doing. Like the data that was released after the first 3-4 rounds showed the hand passing is pretty much the same levels as it was before in those long periods.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say about that is that, yeah, the hand passing is, and partly it's because of that situation that you create in the opposition's half of the pitch, where the defending team drops into the D, or drops into the scoring arc, and then the team with the ball waits for their keeper to come out. So you have this laborious passage of play. But like the statistics that came out from the FRC said there was very little difference in the number of kicks, but you have to remember that there are practically no free kicks anymore in Gaelic football. Everyone is taking a solo on goal unless it's a shot on goal. And the other thing is, where a lot of the kicks were happening in Gaelic football before was you take a short kick out to your corner back, and then because the opposition were retreating, you kick the ball up to somebody in midfield.
Yeah.
Now, because so many kick-outs are going into midfield, that kick has been taken out of the game as well. So I think we probably are seeing more kicks in the final third.
Yeah.
But as an overall statistic, it's probably pretty similar.
But we're getting more interesting kicks. Yeah, I think the goalkeepers, it's going to be an awkward conversation. No one wants to sit Niall Morgan down and say it to him, but like,
this is literally the Niall Morgan rule.
you're
now.
just going to have to be a goalkeeper.
He's the only person out there.
We just can't wait for you to jog up and join in. I mean, we love you.
I didn't mind the rule, but he's gone on about it so much. No, I want to change. He's pissing me off so much. I want specifically to target that one player.
But the problem is that it's so prescribed now, because they've, obviously teams are starting to get data, and they've obviously realised that, okay, the most efficient way for us to get a shot off is that we create a 12-11 over.
And that information is a death knell.
Yeah, so it's now like no matter what's on when you get into the other...
Check back, wait for the keeper.
Just wait for it,
It's going to have to go.
The funniest one at the weekend was Evan Comerford, who wouldn't be as sort of, good an outfield player as Niall Morgan. And obviously Derry had done their sums and decided that whatever way they defend, they weren't going to mark Evan Comerford.
Yeah.
But eventually got to the stage where he was just actually so close to the goal that he had to shoot, and then eventually got the point. So it's a small bit... Like, nobody really wanted to see goalkeepers becoming the main person in Gaelic football. No. This is not what any of us wanted.
No,
so I think there's only one way to go with it.
Yeah. You have seen the first episode of the new golf Netflix Full Swing series.
Yeah, I kind of flicked through it there earlier on in the office.
Working hard.
I mean, it is what the rest of them are. It's a bit too kind of thrilled with itself. Full swing, it kind of builds itself up to be, oh yeah, here we are, it's full swing, we're back. And then you get into the meat of it, and it's not just the meatiest show of all time.
Who's the focus?
Well, the initial focus is on, it kind of teases it up, gives these little trailers of Scotty Scheffler's arrest and Rory McIlroy's sort of family drama.
We get the behind the scenes of Scotty's arrest, do we?
Yeah, and then it gives you nothing of that.
No,
and then
of course it doesn't.
The first episode is all about Augusta. Now it looks really good. Do you know what I mean? If it was a documentary about the Masters that came out the week after the Masters, it would be very good. But too much of it is like, Amanda Balionis and Dan Rappereau kind of trying to give you the very dramatic context, and then the interviews with the players, and they just kind of do interviews like they would be doing after the tournament. So like it looks really, really good, but I'm not sure there's going to be a whole pile of it that you retain.
You're summing up these documentaries increasingly. They look really good and they're terrible. Yeah. They're fast food.
They're big budget, yeah.
But they are effectively brochures for the people that they're covering, They're that's what they are. They're walking advertisements for the...
Yeah, like who gets more out of it, Netflix or the sports? Probably the sports, realistically.
Well, F1 has had one of the biggest revivals of all time.
Yeah, definitely F1, but I'm talking about even the other ones that aren't quite as successful as that. I'd still say they're probably getting more out of it.
Yeah, because the tennis one died on its arse.
So boring though.
Yeah.
Like offensive.
Yeah.
But But the golf one probably is the second most successful one, is it?
I don't know.
No, I don't mean literally, I suppose, by metrics, just in terms of what, if you ask kind of a general consensus of our listeners, I think they might be like, that was pretty.
It's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
Compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
But it's like unless you're really into golf, and I know a lot of golfers who think it's rubbish. So you're limiting the number of people who are going to watch it to just golf people, and even some of them aren't into it.
I thought some of season one, there were storylines that, permeated outside golf fans. Well, I remember watching it with my wife and she finding some of the episodes enjoyable.
Joel Damon.
Joel Damon was one.
Yeah, he was the kind of rare one. But when it gets into, Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas ringing each other from the private jets, it's just like...
Putting that as the first episode, I don't think was their smartest idea.
And it was like take 7.
Yeah.
It was made in Chelsea kind of reality.
Brutal stuff.
Yeah. No. Just go again and go. Hey, Jordan, what are you up to today? It was just a lot.
They're put it this way, they're protecting their products.
Yeah.
Which isn't really the job of a sports documentary or any kind of documentary.
One other thing in the news today, around about now, really, actually, I mean, it's grim. You can kind of be glib about Manchester United because it's a laughing stock, but actually they're having some kind of company-wide call at the moment because a fresh round of redundancies are about to be confirmed. So 200 people are going to lose their job. And then what's made kind of the headline, just because it's kind of funny and interesting in a way, is they're closing the staff canteen. We had touched on it yesterday with Miguel, and the reporting then was no, because basically at United forever, staff have traditionally had a free hot meal. We're the richest club in the world. That's kind of the thing. And it seems like Carrington is, when you see them driving in their blacked out Range Rovers, it does seem a little bit, it's not in the middle of a village where there are other options to eat, I get the sense. So the story over the weekend was, no, it's soup and some bread. That's what you get. Butter maybe, we don't know. But it's now actually they're just closing the staff canteen entirely. And instead, employees will be offered a free piece of fruit.
One.
That's nice, isn't it?
Fruit X1.
Yeah. So that's kind of going on there. I mean, they are making an absolute hames of this.
Well, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
What was the subject of the press release yesterday? Something like they made it sound like it was a really positive thing. The
regeneration.
The transformation plan.
Yeah, the transformation.
Oh yeah,
plan,
no, they're
laying off 200.
They're enacting the transformation.
They didn't mention anywhere in it the level of debt in terms of the interest payments that they have to still pay off for the Glazers' leverage takeover, and they didn't mention the fact that they still have to pay off 300 million in outstanding transfer payments, most of whom to players who have been shipped out on loan to other clubs now because they didn't work out in the first place.
Yeah, it's that whole was it penny smart, pound foolish? There's some saying on that. Something, you get the gist. So Barada said, "We have a responsibility to put Manchester United in the strongest position to win. We're initiating wide-ranging series of measures which will transform and renew the club. Unfortunately, this means announcing further potential redundancies. However, these hard choices are necessary to put the club back on a stable financial footing. We've lost money for the past 5 consecutive years. This cannot continue." So it sounds like such a responsible, sober operation. And yet, as you say, like what's going, the billions
economy
in taken out of the club
and
for debt. Jim White in the Irish Independent website said it would take, he estimates, 400 years worth of free hot lunches to pay off 1 month's interest on the debt they have foisted on the place.
Like 200 people is so many jobs to be cutting, and it's such a, as Connor said, it's such a red herring. Miguel talked about it in the football show yesterday, like whereas they're like kind of making cuts in these really superficial areas where like the amount of money they're wasting elsewhere is absolutely staggering. Like, to cut hot meals and make people just eat one piece of fruit and get rid of 200 people in areas of the club.
They don't force them to eat the piece of fruit. They don't make them.
Oh, they should.
It's optional.
That'd be actually a good thing. Maybe. Force people into that.
Can you imagine the atmosphere in the place? And especially given the 14 million they gave to Ten Hag, the 6 million they have to give to Dan Ashworth around that whole thing.
It's funny because I don't ever consider a football club like a regular company.
Sure.
Like that suffers layoffs outside of the playing staff or managers being fired or what have you. Like, so it's kind of strange to kind of put my head space into that and think of what the staff are going through there. But yeah, I'm sure it's tough, and like it seems to be an extremely grim situation.
Besides anything else, can you imagine the amount of revenue that Manchester United generates? Like from marketing, from merchandise, from all of those things. It is like you can't go on holiday anywhere in the world without seeing Manchester United. Like it penetrates so deep.
Yeah.
And for them to be And like clearly they are in dire financial straits, but to have come this far.
You see, and this is the grotesque original sin of the Glazers. They are, and every year since they took over, they're generating, they're in the top 2 or 3 clubs in the world. So last year, I think Madrid hit $1 billion. Their stadium is off the charts. But United are about third with 800-900 million.
Yeah.
And yet this kind of, geez, we have no money. And it's like, why don't we have money? We seem to be doing incredibly well. And then, it must be so strange to work in a company where people are being paid, obviously, what the players are being paid. I always think that's a real difficult one to get your head around. So their top paid player, just to illustrate the wastage, on 350 grand a week until next year is Casemiro. Bruno's getting 300k a week. Okay, I guess current climate. Number 3,
Anthony.
no, he's gone.
Oh, so none of the guys who've just left on loan.
Yeah. Who would you? The great thing is, I could give you 15 guesses here. You won't get number 3. He's been that anonymous.
Ugarte.
No, he's about 120.
Matthijs de Ligt.
He is 195.
Xerxes.
No. When I say this, you're going to be like, Jesus, yeah, that guy.
No, I'm very intrigued.
Okay, so third highest, taking $250,000 every week. It's a lot of hot lunches. Mason Mount.
Jesus. That's the exact reaction. I'm like, oh yeah,
I forgot he plays with him.
Mason Mount.
So this is what's happening.
Who's Mason's agent?
I don't know. To be fair, he came back from injury and was playing quite well, and then got injured again. That's tough, but
Free hot lunch is a good perk as well.
No, it's not bad.
That is like, I'd like that own job. Like, can that be arranged? Surprised you didn't negotiate that when you joined.
It is a nice perk. Listen, I can see a lot of office space going, no one gets a hot lunch.
Yeah, no, they don't. Well,
but it's that tradition.
Yeah,
of like, we're a wealthy, well-run club.
That's what I was saying.
We're looking after people.
It looks embarrassing and cheap, and like that you have to resort to that. That's the state you're in. The state you're in, that you have to like deprive like your employees of a hot lunch.
I think if I was in the kind of the meeting wherever they decide these things, I would have said I wouldn't go with the free piece of fruit.
yeah, you just knock it on the head.
I just knock it. I just wouldn't. Yeah. I think it's actually it's counterproductive.
Yeah, especially if it's like one of those bananas that's a bit kind of brown on the outside. Yeah. It's just like
small.
Yeah. And like meanwhile, they're trying to get the British taxpayer to pay for their new stadium.
Well, the North needs a Wembley.
And this will go down as one of the greatest strokes of all time.
Yeah, these are this is
sort of end of day stuff, isn't it?
Going off a cliff, this place. Yeah. Alrighty. Anything else? We peaked with the Offaly boys.
No, TGL is growing on me.
Why don't you lead with that?
Oh, sorry, I only thought of it there now. I watched it last night.
Yeah.
First of all, it was on at 8 o'clock in the evening, which makes it far more interesting. Second of all, Tony Fina was on it.
He did Beyonce's dance.
Yeah, Tony's a bit of a dude.
To Beyonce.
Yeah, and I was actually, because the way the first couple of times you watch a thing and you're trying to figure out what it is, and now that your brain knows what it is, the length of time between the shots is actually pretty incredible, because when you sit down to watch a golf tournament and say you want to watch Rory McIlroy and then he hits the ball off the tee and you're like, oh well, now I've got 5 minutes to kill till we see this again, whereas actually it gets through pretty quickly. I enjoyed it. I got through an hour of it last night, which was
wow.
And I hadn't intended to. It was just on. And
the players are genuinely into it, trying.
A little bit too much. Matt Fitzpatrick needs to switch to decaf.
I think it's going to do okay.
Yeah, it's too big to fail. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of money invested in it.
Yeah.
Serena was there last night, actually.
Yeah, I saw it.
I think she's invested in one of the teams.
Yeah, she owns the LA team, I think.
And even like Jason Day was there last night. He's not on any team. He was just in for a look. So it seems to be.
It's a very passable Tuesday evening fodder. It is.
Yeah, if it didn't cost like $500 million to build the dome and all the rest, you're kind of wondering how is this ever going to kind of wash its.
We don't have to much like Manchester United. We don't have to worry.
No. I say they get a hot meal anyway.
Yeah, at least a piece of fruit.
Have you had a glance back at it since? No.
No, it lost me.
And no great itch to.
I've no itch to. Like, I've seen like some highlights of Tiger Woods' wacky mistake that he made. Like that got that got so much overplay that I was like that.
The holes are a bit too gimmicky as well. Like lava in the middle of the fairway and stuff. It's just like it's okay.
The whole thing is gimmicky. I don't think there's a few holes that are
no,
gimmicky.
But I'm with them. I would just have it on
regular
a golf course.
Yeah.
Like pirate ships.
I don't think I'm like, oh, this is the lava hole.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, my ball is after getting incinerated. Oh God, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Crocodiles in the bunker and stuff.
The one downside is no one once, when they've mentioned it to me, has ever even mentioned who won.
Oh yeah, like I don't even,
relevance is to-
I couldn't even tell you who was on whose team last
Yeah.
night. I just know that Ricky Fowler sank a putt from 60 feet on the first, and after that I was like, well, hang on, this
Yeah.
could be a thing.
We did. You need to know who's like.
We had an email in, which it was a good point. Who was saying like the few times you've talked about this, it's interesting. You've never even mentioned who won. And that would show what an irrelevance it is.
Yeah. Can something be interesting if you don't care about the outcome?
Yeah. Like I kind of just, it's kind of nice wallpaper, and not even a bit more than wallpaper viewing.
Yeah.
And I don't care who wins, obviously.
But like that, you might not even know who won. It's not that you don't care; that you don't actually know. Like you've been paying such superficial attention that you're not even sure who won.
But you would know, like, yeah, you'd know who won.
Oh, but did you?
Would you not?
But I wouldn't even know the names of the teams. Like,
But you'd know the team in green. You'd know Ricky Fowler's team are winning.
yeah, no, they did, yeah,
Right. So you do know who won.
yeah. But
He sounds unconvinced.
but like that information would have kind of left my brain as soon as I switched.
I
it off.
know, but like, did Ipswich win at the weekend?
No,
Presumably they did.
Spurs. I think they lost 4.
They lost 4 to Spurs. But you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of sport on.
Ipswich getting
You're just watching
a
it.
drive-by, but
We're just guzzling it all down.
But anyway, look, I think we should do a power rankings for TGL each week. See where it is now.
All right. That is us done then. Yeah. Nothing else. Indosport. Indosport podcast at independent.ie for emails. And then on YouTube, just search Indosport podcast. And that's where you'll find our channel. Conor McKeown, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Will, thanks very much.
Joe.